So last Monday, I thought I was having a heart attack. My heart rate wasn't coming down, I couldn't stop sweating, and it just felt really different to the last time this has happened. Now in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what happened, what SVT is, the changes I've had to make because of it. But let's start out with what SVT is, because before 10 weeks ago, I'd never heard of it. So SVT stands for Supraventricular Tachycardia. So supra means above, ventricular means the lower chambers of your heart, and tachycardia is the medical term for heart rate over 100 beats a minute. So pretty much your heart's electrical signal essentially gets stuck in a loop. Like if I remember back in the day with CDs and I used to get a scratch on and you used to kind of skip on that bit continuously, that's kind of what this is. So your heart essentially glitches and gets stuck in this looping mechanism. So rather than your normal heartbeat where it goes, say, down the heart, like doo-doo, 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 it essentially gets stuck in this top bit, it's like doo-doo, 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 so it doesn't allow that full flow of that electrical charge. That's kind of how I've understood it, not necessarily exactly, but that's how I've kind of made it work in my head. It can be triggered by a bunch of things. It can be triggered by stress, too much caffeine, dehydration, overtraining, a bunch of stuff. And it can also just be something that's genetic, that's something that you have and it gets triggered at a certain point and then kind of comes on from there. Sometimes it just happens randomly and a doctor can't necessarily find a particular reason as to why. But if it does happen, there are ways that you can kind of essentially restart your heart. So you can essentially do something called like a vagal maneuver where you essentially hold your breath and brace down. You can blow into what's like a syringe and like create that same kind of internal pressure that can kind of restart the heart. You can also dunk your face in cold water. That apparently helps also. But these are strategies that I hadn't actually heard before my first episode, so I wasn't actually able to use them. So yeah, it wasn't too helpful then. So let me just kind of take you to where I was 10 weeks ago. I just finished a run on the treadmill. It was a really good workout. It was cooling down, nothing crazy. And my heart rate was coming down really nicely as it normally would. And it was down about the 130, 140 mark. Then all of a sudden, it just shot up to 226 beats a minute. And I was like, that's weird because that's above the 220, which is supposedly your max heart rate. This doesn't seem right. I was like, maybe it will come down. So I'm walking on the treadmill and it wasn't dropping. It just felt off. It felt like my heart was just doing its own thing. So I was very confused. But I was already pushed on time. I had to get into the city for some clients. So I was like, right, I just got to get on with everything. I'll have a quick shower, commute into the city, and yeah, I'll be fine because I'm sure it'll cool down in that time. I was in the shower, nothing changing, commuting into the city, still nothing changing. About halfway on the commute, the heart rate come back down. I was like, and it was a really weird feeling. As that heart rate come down, there was a bit like an out of body feeling of, it's done. Like that kind of sensation, really odd, but I knew that the episode was done, whatever it was. And because obviously before that, I'd never experienced it. So I thought, okay, I'll take note and I'll just deal with it if it happens again. However, after coaching my clients, I got home, had another coffee because I thought nothing of it, went into the gym where I was then coaching the lunchtime class. And I was demoing a Romanian deadlift with a PVC pipe. And then my heart rate just shot straight back up. However, this time it didn't stop because for the full hour, my heart rate was above 200 beats a minute. But I felt really calm and collected. I was just coaching my normal things. I was kind of telling the members in case anything was to go a little bit awry, but I was all right. But I thought, right, I'll probably look into this after the class because this is a bit weird. In hindsight, I maybe should have actioned this a bit sooner, but at the time, I thought it was just weird. It was something I could probably deal with in due course. So after coaching the class, I thought, right, I better call the ambulance because something isn't right here. And yeah, this isn't going down. And I don't think this is going to be good for me sitting above 200 beats a minute for over an hour at that point. So the ambulance come, they took me to the local hospital, run all the usual tests, your ECG, blood pressure, blood work, all the bits. And my troponin levels were high. Now, troponin is a protein that your body releases when your heart's under stress or been damaged. So apparently, like when you've had a heart attack, it's sky high. Normally, for context, day to day, you're thinking anywhere between 15 to 20 is quite normal. So your body kind of, it's just stress of life, right? So doing training, doing bits and bobs, things will be released and then your body clears it. However, so if it was supposed to be between 15 and 20 normally, I went in with a level of 25. And then when they done my next blood test 3 hours later, it was up at 50. And then they done another, so they wouldn't let me go because obviously it was rising. And then another 3 hours later, or a bit more than 3 hours later, but say another couple of hours later, they took another blood test and it was then down at 37. So they said, right, you're discharged because it's coming down. You had a suspected SVT episode, but because they didn't capture it on an ECG, they wasn't able to say you had SVT. So nothing was kind of done. They said, right, go and talk to your doctor. But because it wasn't my local hospital, the information wasn't sent to them. And yeah, anyway. So that all happened on the Wednesday. The following Monday, it happened again. But this time it was doing a bicep curl. So I've had it after a run. I've had it demoing with a PVC pipe. And now I've had it doing a bicep curl. So 3 completely different situations. So because it happened there, this one was shorter. It lasted 5 minutes. I was able to kind of pull my heart rate back down. So I was like, okay, I feel like I have a bit more control, but it still isn't right. So I went to the doctors. They was like, right, if I was you, I'd fund it privately because you're going to be waiting quite a long time. And for someone young like yourself, you'd want to kind of get this sorted because this isn't right. So I self-funded a private echocardiogram, which is essentially an ultrasound of your heart. And that come back and it said my heart's strong, big, healthy, everything looking really good. So I knew it was just an electrical issue. So knowing it was just an electrical issue, I was like, right, okay, there's nothing that I'm necessarily doing per se. My heart's good, it's in a good state, so I can kind of carry on as per. So I kept training. I competed in a half Ironman I already had planned to do. The swim was cancelled, so it was just the bike and the run anyway, but that felt good. Be getting into training, as I've put a couple of videos up already, so everything's been going really, really well. So I told myself I'd be smarter this time. Now that I knew what it was and that I could hopefully kind of get it under control since it was an electrical issue. So I'd stay hydrated, I'd have my electrolytes consistently, I'd have my pre-workout carbs, I'd be consistent with my meal timing, I had 1 coffee max, you know, all the good stuff, all the bits that I know that are gonna kind of help me stay in the best state possible and to support my body through all the training demands that I'm putting it under. And for a while it worked. Then 6 weeks goes by and things have kind of slipped slightly. My water intake kind of dropped off slightly. My coffee started to creep back up. Meal timing started to go out the window. It's something based on my current circumstances, like my work schedule and stuff like that, rather than me saying, right, I need to eat at these sort of times. So it's nothing major, but these small cracks essentially become the weak spots that the heart, say it's SVT thing, can kind of start to lean in on and essentially trigger again, potentially. So let's fast forward to last week, so my triple training day, filming a video. This is the best part about it. Filmed a YouTube video talking about preparation and all stuff like that. This was not prepared at all because this was so far left field and unexpected. So I had my hard bike in the morning, I had my full body lift at lunch, and I had an evening swim lesson that evening. My daughter didn't have gymnastics for whatever reason that week, so I was actually home a bit earlier, so I didn't have to go and pick her up, which meant I had dinner at home before swimming, which is not something I normally do. I normally just have some pre-workout carbs, like a bagel with some jam on. But I had dinner, and dinner was mince and salad. No carbs. Now, not on purpose, it's what I really fancied. Now, obviously, in my mind, the swimming lesson, I'm just cool, we're just doing drills, you swim, but maybe do about 15 minutes of swimming, nothing too major, not too intense either. Got to the swimming pool and found out it was actually a 30-minute time trial, which I was like, oh, buzzing for. I was like, sweet, I get to kind of see where I'm at because I've been putting a lot of work in and I'm feeling really good. So I'm just curious to see how I'm getting on. Now I had a blinder of a swim. I swam 1,375 meters in 30 minutes, which is the most I've ever swam in that time frame. I think it's about a 2 minutes 10 per 100 meters, roughly 2 minutes 5 or 2 minutes 10 per 100, which is the best I've ever done for that kind of duration. So over the moon. Got out the pool, started drying off, and something just wasn't right. And yeah, it just felt a bit off. So firstly, I just couldn't get dry. Now, I had that weird, like, clammy feeling. And I was like, I'm drying myself. I'm like, oh, maybe it's just because I'm a bit hot still from the training and the pool. I just can't cool down. So I kind of brushed that off. I checked my watch and it was sitting around 100, but it wasn't dropping. But I was like, okay, post-workout, 100 beats a minute. It's not too abnormal. It's probably all right. Just feel a little bit weird. I then started to feel a little bit nauseous. So I tried to walk it off. I had to go shopping to get a few bits for the next day, but I couldn't push the trolley. I was having to have my head down like this, walking around trolley, and I realized I couldn't stand up without feeling sick and grabbing stuff. So I was like, okay, this is a bit weird. So I managed to get to the end of the shopping. I only needed a few bits and got myself home. Got in, the missus said to me, you look a bit pale. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I just really need to lay down. I'm just really tired, and I didn't have any pre-workout carbs, so maybe I'm just really tired. So I had a couple of dates, and I was like, because that's all I could really stomach. But my heart was still pounding and it felt out of control. But I was confused because it was only about 100 beats a minute. So I just didn't think it was SVT. I didn't think it was this issue again. So the missus called it. She was like, right, we're gonna get an ambulance. She called the ambulance. Thankfully, the kids were asleep at this point and I was downstairs. And once she called the ambulance, this is then when the pain started. All I can describe the pain is, it was a crushing sensation of essentially someone has got their hand into the middle of my rib cage and essentially cracked my ribs and then pushed down into like my open like mid chest. It was so excruciating. And that was for about an hour. So I had this and it just kept getting worse. Shortness of breath. If I thought there was thoughts that it could be a heart attack. I didn't know. I didn't think it was that bad because I thought it must feel worse. But the pain I was in at the time, I just wasn't sure. So the missus on the phone to 999 and they're like, cool, right. The ambulance is on its way. It's going to be about 40 minutes. So between 40 and 60 minutes, it come 40 minutes later. But in that time, it's getting worse. She's then called them back up because it started to get worse. And they was like, right, do you have any aspirin? And I still had some aspirin from my last hospital visit. So they said, chew on the aspirin. And this is right, literally as the paramedics are pulling up. I've chewed on an aspirin and literally as soon as I've bitten down into it and it's kind of dissolved in my mouth in a way, I was then violently sick. And yeah, and how this sensation of being sick was essentially as you've been sick before, there's that bracing that you do in your stomach. And yeah, so really sick. The paramedics come in and literally as I finished being sick, I stood up and I was like, it's done. And I had that same feeling of when I was halfway through commuting to work last time of that floating feeling like, oh, it's over. Really annoying because then they didn't capture an ECG, but at least it was over. So back to the hospital, more tests, more ECGs, more bloods. Same diagnosis, essentially suspected SVT. However, this time I was in for 2 nights, the Monday night and the Tuesday night, and I was back home on the Wednesday evening. So yeah, that wasn't great. So when I started asking the doctors a bunch of questions, they said, it's essentially just how your wiring is. It's not necessarily dangerous, but it's not something that you want to ignore. And when these things happen, it's something you want to kind of take note of and kind of get it checked out. So I asked them straight up, am I doing anything to cause this? Because at the end of the day, nothing I'm doing is worth dying over. Yes, I love training. Yes, I love all the stuff I'm doing, but not at the risk of my life. That this is supposed to be making me healthier. I'm seeing my health metrics improve, like my resting heart rate go down, my HRV going up, my general well-being improving. Everything is feeling really good. But I'm essentially what feels like having a heart attack. This doesn't feel right. So they reassured me that it's treatable. I'm not necessarily doing anything wrong. And it's just sometimes just how you're wired. And a particular scenario could just get it triggering. It doesn't even need to happen due to training. And as I say, it's happened in so many different ways. It's happened after a run. It's happened demoing something with a PVC pipe. It's happened doing a bicep curl. It's happened writing on a whiteboard. And it's happened after a swim. So there's been 5 separate episodes, all of different lengths and all in different styles. So none of it has been consistent. So it's been really hard for me to kind of try and work out a trigger. So since leaving, I've been sent a 7-day Holter check, like heart monitor. I've been booked in for a scan. I think it's an MRI just to rule out myocarditis, because even though they said it was unlikely, as I didn't have any virus beforehand, they just want to make sure there's no like inflammation of like the heart sac and that kind of area. I think I've got an appointment for an ablation consultation in January next year. So the ablation is what they're essentially going to hopefully do to correct this. This is where they're going to send up basically this little thing up through my inner thigh, essentially to my heart, trigger the SVT, and then essentially singe it. So what I can imagine is if my heart has then a little bit of a growth when the SVT goes on, that's what they kind of singe, so then that doesn't get hit by the electrical wiring system. This is kind of how I'm picturing in my head. It's not necessarily it is what it is, but this is what I'm picturing. So I'm going to be obviously monitoring my HRV, my resting heart rate and stuff, because if I do start to see it increase, I can see my body's under stress and it's not necessarily in a good place. So that's something that I'm going to want to make sure I get on top of. So I've also bought a handheld ECG, which is equivalent to a 6-point lead. So in a hospital, they wire you up to a 12-point. So this is equivalent to a 6-point. So it's really good. It's really portable. So for anyone that does have any heart issues and want to capture it, you can't really rely upon your watch, even these ones with ECG. So there's the Apple Ultra, or the Apple Watches have ECG on, and the new Garmin Forerunner 970. I think that and some others have the ECG function, but that's only equivalent to a 1-point lead. So this, the one that I've got is to a 6-point. I'll put the link in the description just for anyone that may have it. It's really, really good. And the hospital also gave me some beta blockers, so which makes me feel really old. So basically, if this does happen, they've said if it gets out of control, capture on the ECG first, the thing that I've got, then take a beta blocker. Or I can capture on the ECG and get myself to a hospital, and then hopefully then they can capture it on the 12 points, so then they can really see exactly where in the heart is needed to be ablated to help fix this, because they can't just go up there and just trigger a random thing. They need to know exactly where and how, so then when they trigger it, they can get the right thing fixed. And on my end, I'm just tightening things up again, so more structure to everything that I was doing, less caffeine. I'm back down to just 1 a day, maybe even none a day, so just having my decaf. Improve my sleep hygiene, so darker room, cool room, reading my Bible before bed, you know, getting my mind to slow down and kind of get into a real state of like gratitude and helping me sleep well. And as I mentioned, you know, monitoring my HRV, rest and heart rate and all that good stuff, just to kind of keep on top of it, because if I do start to see any trends start to happen, I say, cool, let me get on with it and let's make sure that I don't let myself go too crazy. I am kind of wanting it to trigger again while I'm wearing this Holter monitor. So, but at the same time, I kind of don't want to trigger it. So yeah, I'm in two minds. But I'm going to keep you guys posted as I get updates. If you've had an SVT or an ablation, I'd love to hear about your experience, because for me, even though I know it's really normal, apparently a bunch of footballers get it and stuff like this. It's quite common. But even though it's common, it's still your heart, and you're still having surgery to your heart, which doesn't feel good. So I'd love to hear some of your stories down below. So if you do have anything, please do drop it in the comment section, or if you have any thoughts. Because I mean, everything that I've heard says like, once it's sorted, you get back to normal, you'll have a strong, healthy heart, and you'll be able to just crack back on. And essentially I've got a lot of goals, say, for next year and beyond, but I can only achieve them if I'm in a healthy state. And they're not worth dying over. So at the end of the day, I need to make sure I'm in good state. So I'm grateful that I'm still young and healthy, which means that hopefully my body can recover from the surgery and kind of help me get back to full fitness. But I guess only time will tell, because I've obviously got Ironman 70.3 Swansea in the diary in July, which is in 8 months' time, and a race hopefully a couple months later, which is I'm really looking forward to potentially doing. But I'll dive more into that potentially in the next video, because that's still on the card. It's not necessarily guaranteed, but it's something I really want to do. But thanks a lot for watching. As I said, if you've got any experience with anything like this, I'd love to hear all about it. If you want to see kind of what happened the training day right before this episode, right before this SVT episode happened, check out my last video, my triple day of training that ended me up in hospital. You can see that here. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.